She was just another fighter pilot until her radio crackled "Send help," and she did the unthinkable. For some, flying was a dream. For her, it was a calling. Ever since she was a child, she imagined herself sitting in the cockpit of a powerful jet, the wind roaring past, and the world below shrinking into tiny patches of color. That feeling of complete control, of absolute focus, and of being alone with her thoughts amidst the clouds was something she craved. It wasn't about adventure or thrill for her. It was about responsibility. She understood that flying came with duty, and she was determined to meet it with courage. She had trained for years to become a fighter pilot. It wasn't easy. Every day demanded physical endurance, mental sharpness, and discipline. She remembered waking up before dawn, running long distances in the cold, doing endless drills to strengthen her reflexes, and sitting in classrooms learning the intricate details of aircraft systems, aerial combat strategies, and navigation. Every test pushed her limits. Every simulation tested her patience and decision-making under pressure. There were moments when she questioned herself, thinking she might not be able to handle it all, but she never gave up. She kept reminding herself why she had chosen this path. The sky was her home, and protecting those below was her mission. In the base, she was known for her quiet determination. She wasn't loud or boastful. While some pilots tried to impress others with daring stunts or flashy maneuvers, she focused on precision, skill, and learning from every small mistake. She earned respect slowly, not through words, but through her actions. Her squadron mates often noticed how she studied maps meticulously, how she handled the smallest problems in the cockpit with calmness, and how she treated everyone around her with respect. Even senior officers knew she could be trusted with critical tasks. But despite all this, she was often just another pilot in a male-dominated environment. She didn't mind. Her work spoke for itself, and she preferred it that way. Her life outside the base was different. While some of her friends spent their free time at parties or social events, she found peace in quiet activities. She enjoyed reading, painting small sketches of aircraft, and sometimes taking long walks in the evening while watching the sunset. Those moments allowed her to recharge and reflect. She thought about her family, who had always supported her dreams, even if they didn't fully understand the risks she took every day. They were proud, but they worried. Her younger brother often asked, "Do you really have to fly so far and risk so much?" She would smile and reply, "I can't imagine doing anything else." Deep down, she knew that this was more than a job. It was a responsibility she was ready to embrace, no matter the cost. She also had a close group of friends in the base, though she often kept a professional distance. There was a sense of camaraderie among pilots that was hard to explain to outsiders. They joked together, shared stories from missions, and sometimes teased each other over small mistakes. Yet, when it came to serious work, they were united. Every member of the squadron relied on the others, knowing that in a life-or-death situation, every action mattered. She had learned that teamwork was just as important as individual skill. In training exercises, she often stayed behind to help newer pilots understand difficult maneuvers or strategies. Her patience and encouragement made her well-liked, even if she remained reserved. The day began like many others. She arrived at the airbase early in the morning, the sky painted with soft shades of orange and pink. The hum of engines, the distant voices of ground crew, and the smell of fuel filled the air. Everything seemed ordinary, yet she felt a small twinge of anticipation. Perhaps it was instinct. Pilots often sensed when a day might not be routine, even before the alarms rang or orders came in. She checked her gear meticulously, reviewing flight plans, confirming weather conditions, and running through safety checks. Every detail mattered. In the cockpit, even the smallest oversight could turn into a major problem. She was methodical and careful, knowing that preparation could mean the difference between success and disaster. Her jet stood ready on the tarmac, gleaming in the morning light. It was powerful and sleek, designed for speed, agility, and precision. She climbed in, adjusted her seat, and ran through the pre-flight checklist. The engines roared to life, vibrating under her, and she felt that familiar thrill of anticipation. Flying wasn't just about control. It was about being attuned to the machine, feeling its every movement, understanding how it responded to commands, and respecting its limits. She loved that connection, that partnership between human and machine. Once airborne, the world below transformed. Cities became tiny patterns of lights and shapes. Rivers looked like thin ribbons and forests turned into endless green carpets. She marveled at the beauty, but her focus never wavered. She ran through maneuvers, practicing loops, dives, and coordinated turns with precision. Even in seemingly routine flights, she treated every second as critical practice. She reminded herself that skill was built not only in emergencies, but in ordinary moments too. She believed in preparation, and preparation meant readiness for anything. That day, she was scheduled for a standard patrol mission alongside a few other pilots from her squadron. Orders were straightforward: monitor the designated airspace, report any unusual activity, and maintain formation. On paper, it was routine. Yet, as they soared over mountains and valleys, the sense of isolation in the vast sky always reminded her that even the simplest tasks required vigilance. Pilots often said that the sky taught humility. No matter how skilled one was, the conditions, machines, and unexpected situations demanded respect and constant awareness. She had learned that lesson well. During the patrol, they flew in tight formation, communicating over the radio with short, clear messages. There was comfort in knowing that her comrades were nearby, each one ready to act if needed. They shared small observations, joking lightly to break the monotony of long hours in the air. She appreciated those moments. They reminded her that behind the uniform, each pilot had a personality, a story, and emotions just like hers. Yet she never let laughter compromise focus. Every action was deliberate, every decision calculated. Discipline was ingrained in her, as natural as breathing. As they passed over a stretch of rugged terrain, she noticed subtle signs of change in the air: slightly darker clouds forming, winds shifting direction, and the faint shimmer of turbulence ahead. Even experienced pilots respected nature's unpredictability. She adjusted her altitude, maintained steady control, and signaled the squadron. "Keep eyes on the horizon. Conditions might shift," she warned calmly over the radio. Her colleagues acknowledged. It was a small moment, but it revealed her attentiveness. She didn't panic, she prepared. That combination of awareness and composure had earned her respect in countless drills and exercises. Amid the quiet of the sky, she allowed herself a brief thought about how ordinary this day seemed compared to the potential dangers of her profession. Every mission carried risk. She remembered stories of pilots facing emergencies, engine failures, or unexpected combat situations. Those experiences had shaped her understanding of courage. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was acting despite it, with clear judgment and responsibility. She had embraced that philosophy fully, knowing it would guide her through whatever challenges lay ahead. Her mind drifted slightly, reflecting on her journey to this point. From a young girl who marveled at airplanes to a disciplined fighter pilot, she had faced countless obstacles. There had been skeptics who doubted her abilities, challenges in a male-dominated environment, and moments when she questioned her own limits. But she had overcome each hurdle through persistence, skill, and a steadfast belief in her purpose. Those experiences had shaped not only her capabilities, but also her character. She knew that true strength wasn't only measured in physical skill, but in resilience, intelligence, and empathy. As the flight continued, she maintained a careful balance between observation, control, and reflection. Every turn, every adjustment of throttle, every check of instruments was executed with precision. She felt the jet respond beneath her, a perfect extension of her mind and body. There was satisfaction in mastery, but also humility. The sky had a way of teaching respect. One small mistake could lead to disaster. She remembered those lessons constantly, and they guided her decisions even in routine flights. She also kept an eye on her fellow pilots. In her squadron, teamwork was paramount. They depended on each other not only for support, but for survival. She noticed subtle signs in their formations, slight hesitations, or adjustments in response to the wind. She communicated with gentle reminders, encouragement, and guidance. Leadership wasn't about giving orders, it was about fostering confidence and ensuring safety. Her quiet confidence often inspired others without her even trying. They knew she was capable, reliable, and observant. Hours passed in the sky. The routine patrol, while ordinary on paper, felt meaningful. Every observation, every maneuver, every communication mattered. She appreciated the discipline of routine because it built habits that could save lives in emergencies. She thought about the training exercises, the simulations, and the countless hours spent perfecting skills. All of it led to readiness, not for glory but for responsibility. That sense of purpose drove her, kept her focused, and gave meaning to each flight. As the mission neared completion, she reflected on her position in the squadron. Many might see her as just another pilot, blending into the background of a disciplined unit. But she knew that her contributions mattered. Every precise maneuver, every careful observation, every patient instruction to others created a foundation of safety and efficiency. She didn't seek recognition, she sought excellence. And in the world of fighter pilots, excellence often meant quiet competence, steady nerves, and unwavering attention. Little did she know that this seemingly ordinary day, this routine patrol, would soon become the moment that defined her. The sky, which she had always loved for its calm and freedom, was about to test her in ways she had never imagined. Her training, discipline, and courage would be called upon, not for a practice exercise, but for a real challenge where lives would depend on her decisions. And in that moment, the quiet pilot, often overlooked, would show the true measure of bravery. The day had started like any other patrol, but as she soared above the rugged terrain, a sense of focus sharpened her senses. She had grown accustomed to the quiet rhythm of routine flights, the hum of engines, the occasional chatter over the radio, and the way the horizon stretched endlessly before her. But then, just as she was checking her instruments, a sudden crackle came through the radio. It was faint at first, almost lost beneath the static. Then the voice became clearer, strained, urgent. "Send help, we're trapped, need assistance." Her heart skipped a beat. That was not routine. She immediately scanned the sky, eyes narrowing against the glare of the sun. She knew every sound on that radio had a purpose. There was no room for doubt. Her instincts kicked in instantly, honed by years of training. She acknowledged the message quickly, her voice steady but firm. "Copy that, we're assessing the situation, hold tight." The other pilots in the formation reacted quickly too. The squadron commander's voice came over the radio, calm yet commanding. "All units, maintain formation and be ready for action. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." Visual confirmation is priority. Everyone snapped into sharper focus, their casual chatter gone, replaced by professional precision. She glanced at her instruments and the maps projected on her heads-up display. The emergency signal came from a lower valley, a region known for its difficult terrain and unpredictable weather. She felt a familiar mix of apprehension and determination. This wasn't a drill. Lives were at stake, and her decisions now mattered more than ever. She briefed herself mentally on the area: rocky cliffs, narrow passages, unpredictable wind currents. Every piece of information would be critical in the coming minutes. Her squadron followed her lead. They moved closer to the source of the distress call, keeping formation tight. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her. Every pilot in that formation was counting on each other, but the person in need was relying solely on them for survival. She reminded herself that fear was normal, but it could not control her actions. Discipline and quick thinking would guide her. As they descended toward the valley, she noticed small changes in the landscape: shadows cast by cliffs, gusts of wind whipping through narrow canyons, and loose rocks that could pose a hazard to anyone below. Flying through such terrain was risky. One miscalculation could send a plane spiraling out of control. But hesitation was not an option. She adjusted her speed, tightened her grip on the controls, and guided her jet carefully. The engines roared steadily, responding to her commands as if they understood the urgency. She could hear the panic in the pilot's voice over the radio now. "I can't hold position. Something's wrong with my engine. I'm losing altitude." Each word intensified her sense of responsibility. She had trained for emergencies, for these split-second decisions that could mean life or death. But theory and reality were different. There was no room for error. She reminded herself to stay calm, to think clearly, and to act decisively. Her fellow pilots formed a protective perimeter above her as she maneuvered toward the distressed plane. She signaled to them to maintain their positions and keep communication clear. Their eyes scanned the surroundings, looking for any threats or obstacles. They had trained for combat, for hostile situations, but this was different. The danger came from nature itself: the rocky cliffs, strong wind gusts, and the narrow pathways that left little margin for error. She approached the pilot's location and saw the aircraft struggling. Smoke trailed from one of the engines, and the plane tilted dangerously as it tried to maintain altitude. Her stomach tightened at the sight, but her hands remained steady on the controls. Panic was natural, but she had to project calm and confidence. She spoke over the radio in measured tones. "I'm coming to you. Maintain control as best you can. I've got you." The pilot below, barely holding steady, responded with a shaky acknowledgement. Thank you." The relief in his voice was palpable, but it was clear he was on the edge. She could see the strain in the aircraft's movements. Every second counted. She began to assess the safest approach. Getting too close could risk collision. Staying too far might prevent her from offering effective assistance. She remembered her training, every simulation, and every rescue exercise she had undergone. There was no manual for real emergencies like this. Every move had to be calculated, precise, and flexible. She adjusted her altitude, lining up for a position that allowed her to guide the pilot without putting herself in unnecessary danger. The wind in the valley picked up unexpectedly, swirling around the cliffs and creating turbulence that tossed her jet slightly. She compensated instantly, feeling the aircraft respond to her touch. It was a dance with the machine, a silent communication that required focus, skill, and experience. One wrong input, one hesitation could spell disaster. Yet she remained composed, reminding herself to breathe, to observe, and to act decisively. Over the radio, she heard the pilot's voice again, strained with fear. "I don't know if I can hold," she responded firmly. "You can. Focus on your instruments. I'm here. You're not alone." Words mattered. Encouragement, clarity, and confidence could stabilize a pilot as much as technical skill. She knew that her calm presence could make a difference. She carefully guided the pilot toward a safer altitude, maneuvering through tight canyons while monitoring every instrument. The engines roared, resisting the rapid adjustments, but her control never wavered. She was aware of the danger around every corner, the jagged cliffs, the sudden gusts of wind, the rocky peaks that could scrape a wing if misjudged. But her experience and preparation guided her actions. She had faced difficult situations before, though never exactly like this. Time seemed to stretch. Every second carried weight. She maintained constant communication with her squadron, reporting her position, movements, and observations. Coordination was critical. The other pilots provided backup, scanning for hazards, ready to intervene if needed. But the task at hand required her skill, courage, and precision. She reminded herself that hesitation could cost a life. Finally, she was in position to assist the pilot directly. The engine's smoke had thickened, and the aircraft below wavered dangerously. She maneuvered alongside, offering guidance on altitude, speed, and direction. Her voice over the radio was calm yet firm, each instruction timed perfectly to prevent panic. The pilot below responded, trusting her implicitly despite the fear. The situation demanded creativity. She couldn't physically repair the engine or take over the aircraft, but she could guide the pilot to a safer path. She used every bit of knowledge from her training, wind patterns, emergency procedures, and her own understanding of human psychology under stress. She spoke in short, clear sentences, repeating key instructions and monitoring the aircraft's response. As they navigated through the valley, the pilot began to stabilize slightly. The smoke continued to trail, but he followed her guidance with increasing precision. She felt a surge of relief but kept her focus. There was no room for celebration yet. The journey through the treacherous terrain was not complete. Every maneuver had to be deliberate, and she had to anticipate potential dangers ahead. She noticed a narrow gap between two cliffs, a safe passage that could allow the pilot to gain control and ascend to open air. She carefully calculated speed, angle, and timing, then directed the pilot toward it. "Right a little, now steady, you're doing great, keep going." Her voice carried authority, confidence, and reassurance. Slowly, the aircraft below responded. The engine sputtered but held. The pilot's control improved. Her squadron provided support, ready to assist if needed, but they watched in awe as she managed the rescue with precision and calmness. Every movement, every instruction, every decision showcased her skill and courage. The pilot below began to breathe more evenly, his trust in her growing with every second. Finally, the aircraft cleared the cliffs, entering a safer zone. The smoke had not disappeared, but the immediate danger had lessened. She guided the pilot toward the designated safe landing area, carefully navigating each step. The tension in her muscles eased slightly, but she stayed alert. Emergencies often had surprises, and one mistake now could undo all their efforts. Over the radio, the pilot finally spoke with a steadier voice. I can manage from here thanks to you, she replied simply. You did all the hard work, I just guided you. Focus on the landing, we'll be right behind you. Her humility was natural. She understood that leadership often meant enabling others to succeed rather than taking credit. The descent continued with careful coordination. She monitored every instrument, every adjustment, ensuring the pilot below remained safe. Her focus never wavered, her skills guiding them through turbulence, narrow gaps, and unpredictable wind currents. The relief in the pilot's voice grew, but she remained calm, knowing that the most critical phase, landing, was still ahead. As they approached the landing area, she signaled the other pilots to maintain positions for backup and observation. The ground crew was notified, and emergency protocols were prepared. Every detail mattered. Preparation, coordination, and clear communication could prevent any last-minute complications. Finally, the pilot touched down safely, and she followed, guiding her jet in formation with professionalism and precision. The adrenaline that had fueled her through the crisis began to ebb, replaced by exhaustion and quiet relief. The mission that had begun as routine had transformed into a life-saving rescue, and she had met it with courage, skill, and calm determination. As she taxied to the designated area, she reflected briefly on what had just occurred. Fear, tension, and uncertainty had been present every moment, yet she had acted decisively. Her training, experience, and focus had guided her actions, but so had something deeper, an instinctive sense of responsibility, empathy, and courage. She realized that this day, which had begun as ordinary, would never feel ordinary again. She had faced the unthinkable and risen to the challenge. The rescue had gone better than anyone could have hoped, but as she circled above the valley to ensure the pilot was steady, she noticed something troubling. The engine smoke from the damaged aircraft had thickened again, and the turbulence in the narrow canyon below was stronger than before. What seemed like a controlled situation was now teetering on the edge of real danger. Her instincts flared. This was no longer just guiding the pilot. She had to take action to prevent a potential disaster. She assessed the terrain quickly, her mind calculating every possible risk. The canyon walls were steep, jagged, and uneven, leaving very little room for error. Any sudden gust could push the aircraft against the rocks. She also had to consider her own position, maneuvering carefully so as not to collide with the other jet while maintaining a protective stance. Every second counted, and hesitation could be fatal. Over the radio, she heard the pilot's voice again, strained and anxious. I think the engine is failing again. I can't hold much longer." Her heart tightened, but she forced herself to remain calm. Panic would not help, and she knew that her steadiness could literally save this person's life. "Stay focused," she said firmly. "Keep your eyes on me, trust your instruments. We'll get through this together." The pilot below followed her guidance, but the aircraft wavered dangerously. Smoke billowed from the engine, curling in the wind as if signaling the growing urgency. She realized that waiting for the aircraft to regain stability on its own might not be enough. She needed a plan, something proactive and daring, something that would truly test her skills and courage. She took a deep breath and reminded herself of everything she had learned during years of training. First, she needed to stabilize the pilot's path. She guided him along the flattest portion of the canyon, avoiding sudden drops or jagged rocks. Her voice over the radio was precise, short, and steady. "Bank right slightly, reduce speed, now maintain level. Good. Hold that." She monitored the pilot's responses carefully, noting every micro-adjustment he made. The aircraft responded slowly, but it was improving. Every slight stabilization was a victory, and she encouraged him quietly. Then she noticed a larger problem. The engine's smoke was becoming thicker, suggesting a potential total failure. The pilot could not maintain altitude for long. A crash was now a real possibility. She realized that the unthinkable was about to become necessary. Standard protocols for emergencies had limits, and sometimes rules could not save lives. She had to think creatively, to act decisively, and to accept personal risk. Her mind raced through options. She could call for backup, but the nearest rescue unit was far away and might not arrive in time. She could attempt to guide the pilot to a small emergency landing area in the valley, but the space was tight, uneven, and surrounded by cliffs. The chance of a collision or crash was high. She knew that if she acted boldly with precise control and coordination, she could influence the outcome. But it would take skill, courage, and calm under pressure. She glanced at her squadron, who were following her lead, watching intently, trusting her judgment. With a quiet but determined exhale, she made her decision. She would fly alongside the pilot, providing direct guidance, stabilizing him through maneuvers, and taking calculated risks to prevent the aircraft from spiraling out of control. This was beyond standard procedure. It was extraordinary, but she was ready. Her training had prepared her for emergencies, and her instincts guided her now. She descended carefully, maneuvering into position beside the damaged aircraft. The canyon walls rose on either side, and the turbulence tossed both jets unpredictably. Her eyes scanned constantly, her hands adjusting controls with precision. She spoke over the radio, her voice calm yet commanding. "Keep level, I'm right beside you. Focus on my position, follow my movements. You're not alone." The pilot below responded, a mix of fear and trust in his voice. I'm trying, I can't stabilize it." She could hear the strain in his words, but she knew that reassurance could make a difference. "You are doing it. Small steps. Follow me." One maneuver at a time. Every instruction was carefully timed, every adjustment deliberate. The stakes were high. One wrong move, one moment of hesitation could lead to disaster. As they navigated through the narrow canyon, she used every skill she had honed over years of training. She anticipated wind gusts, adjusted altitude and speed continuously, and positioned herself to buffer the pilot from sudden turbulence. It was like a dance in the sky, each move synchronized to protect both aircraft. She could feel the strain on her own jet, but she remained steady, a calm presence amid chaos. Her squadron maintained their positions above, monitoring the situation, but she had taken the lead. The responsibility weighed heavily, but she did not falter. Her mind focused entirely on the moment, each calculation precise, each instruction clear, each maneuver deliberate. Fear was present, but it did not control her. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was acting despite it, and she acted with confidence born of experience and training. The pilot's plane began to stabilize slightly, following her lead. The smoke remained, but the trajectory was manageable. She knew they had a chance to reach a safer area, a clearing where the pilot could attempt a controlled emergency landing. But the path was narrow, winding, and bordered by sheer cliffs. Misjudging speed or angle could send the plane crashing. She reminded herself that precision and timing were critical. "Turn slightly left, hold steady now, rise gradually," she instructed, watching as the aircraft responded. Slowly, it began to follow her guidance. She encouraged the pilot, reinforcing confidence with every word. "You're doing it, keep focus. You can do this, we're almost there." Her calm, firm presence became a lifeline, helping the pilot manage fear while executing complex maneuvers. As they approached the clearing, turbulence grew stronger. Wind currents twisted unpredictably around cliffs, creating sudden jolts. She adjusted her position, creating a buffer for the pilot, guiding him through the safest path. Her movements were calculated, precise, and deliberate, every adjustment designed to stabilize both aircraft and avoid obstacles. She could feel the strain, but adrenaline and training kept her sharp. The pilot's confidence began to grow. With each successful maneuver, his fear diminished slightly, replaced by trust in her guidance. She continued to speak, combining instructions with reassurance. "Level out, steady, keep your eyes on me. You're in control." One step at a time. Her voice was steady, unwavering, a rock amid the storm. Finally, the aircraft reached the edge of the clearing. She signaled the pilot to prepare for landing, guiding him to the safest spot possible given the terrain. She adjusted her own jet to maintain a protective position, ready to intervene if needed. Every second was critical. The ground approached quickly, and precision was the only way to avoid disaster. The pilot executed the landing with trembling hands but increasing control, following her lead exactly. The aircraft touched down safely, bouncing slightly on the uneven terrain but remaining intact. She exhaled silently, maintaining focus as the pilot brought the jet to a complete stop. Relief washed over her, but she remained alert. Emergencies often had unexpected complications, and she could not relax fully until the situation was stable. Her squadron moved in, circling above, watching as the pilot secured the aircraft. Ground teams were on the way, ready to provide assistance. She finally allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. The pilot was safe, the immediate danger passed, and the mission, which had begun as ordinary, had become extraordinary. Over the radio, the pilot spoke with a calmer, steadier voice. I don't know how to thank you. I thought I was done for, she responded simply, her voice quiet but firm. You did the hard part. You stayed calm and followed instructions. That's what saved you. I just guided you. Her humility was natural. She knew that success was rarely achieved alone. Teamwork, trust, and courage had made this rescue possible. Even as adrenaline faded, she remained thoughtful. She considered how quickly a routine day could change, how unpredictable emergencies could test skill, courage, and determination. She reflected on the years of training, the discipline, and the preparation that had allowed her to act decisively in the moment. Without them, the outcome might have been very different. She guided her own jet to land nearby, touching down safely on the uneven terrain. The ground crew moved in immediately, checking both aircraft and attending to the pilot. Her squadron gathered, offering nods of respect and acknowledgement. In that moment, she realized that her actions had not only saved a life, but demonstrated the very essence of courage, skill, and responsibility. Though exhausted, she felt a quiet satisfaction. The crisis had tested every aspect of her training, every ounce of her focus, and every measure of her courage. She had acted decisively, creatively, and with unwavering calm, proving to herself and others that heroism often emerges in moments of extreme pressure. As she stepped out of the cockpit, she allowed herself a brief glance at the sky. The sun had shifted, casting long shadows over the rugged terrain. She thought about the pilot she had guided, the teamwork that had made the rescue possible, and the extraordinary circumstances that had turned a routine flight into a defining moment. She understood that bravery was not about glory or recognition. It was about responsibility, focus, and action when it mattered most. She also thought about her own limits. This mission had pushed her beyond what she thought possible. The fear, tension, and uncertainty had been intense, but she had met them with clarity and courage. The experience would stay with her, shaping not only her skills but her understanding of what it meant to serve, to lead, and to act decisively in critical moments. Her fellow pilots gathered around, offering congratulations, but she remained humble. It was a team effort, she said quietly. We all did our part. Yet inside, she knew she had taken a risk that went beyond ordinary duty. She had made the unthinkable choice to engage directly, to guide the pilot through impossible terrain, and to act decisively when hesitation could have been deadly. That choice had defined her courage and skill in a way that words alone could not capture. As she finally rested, she reflected on the lesson she had learned. Bravery is not about being fearless. It is about acting with skill, calm, and responsibility in the face of fear. It is about understanding the stakes, trusting your training, and having the courage to take decisive action when lives depend on it. The events of that day were still fresh in her mind as she sat in the briefing room with her squadron and commanding officers. The adrenaline from the rescue had faded, leaving a profound sense of reflection. She thought about how ordinary the day had started, how routine the patrol had seemed, and how quickly everything had shifted into a life-or-death situation. Even now, recounting the moments felt surreal. She had always trained for emergencies, but real-life crises tested her in ways no simulation ever could. Her fellow pilots were sharing their observations, analyzing the maneuvers and decisions made during the rescue. The commanding officer looked at her with a mixture of pride and admiration. You demonstrated exceptional skill and judgment today, he said, his voice steady but filled with respect. Your actions saved a life and prevented what could have been a major incident. This is beyond what we normally expect in a standard mission. She listened quietly, acknowledging their words with a simple nod. Praise was never her goal. She had acted because she had to, because there was no other choice in the moment. But hearing their recognition gave her a subtle warmth, a quiet satisfaction that her training, focus, and courage had made a tangible difference. She knew that bravery often came quietly, without fanfare, and today had been one of those moments. As the debrief continued, she reflected on the pilot she had saved. The man was younger, less experienced, and terrified by the sudden engine failure. Yet he had followed instructions, trusted her guidance, and remained calm enough to execute the necessary maneuvers. Without his cooperation and trust, the outcome could have been very different. She realized that heroism often depended not only on personal skill, but also on the ability to inspire confidence in others. Leadership, she thought, was about enabling people to rise to the occasion, even in moments of fear. Later, as she walked across the airbase, the gravity of the day began to settle in. Ground crew members and fellow pilots greeted her with nods, some offering quiet congratulations. She felt a mixture of humility and pride. Her focus had always been on performing her duties to the best of her abilities, not on seeking recognition. Yet she understood that her actions had set an example for others, demonstrating what could be achieved with calm determination, skill, and courage. In her quarters, she finally allowed herself a moment to reflect privately. She thought about the twists and turns of the day, the sudden radio call, the engine failure, the narrow canyon, the smoke, and the turbulence. Each moment had demanded quick thinking, precise control, and unwavering calm. She realized that the unthinkable had become necessary, that ordinary training alone was not enough. Courage and decision-making under pressure had been just as important. Her mind returned to the pilot's face when he had finally stabilized the aircraft. Fear, relief, and gratitude had all been visible in his eyes. That memory remained with her, the knowledge that she had guided someone through danger, that her presence had made a difference, that her actions had directly saved a life. She understood in that moment that the responsibility of a pilot extended beyond flying machines. It extended to protecting, guiding, and inspiring those around her. The next few days were a mixture of routine and reflection. Reports were filed, debriefings held, and the media caught wind of the extraordinary rescue. The story spread across the airbase and eventually beyond. Headlines praised the bravery, skill, and calm decision-making demonstrated during the incident. She read the articles with quiet detachment. Public recognition was not her goal, but she understood that the story could inspire others, especially young pilots, to embrace responsibility and courage. Her colleagues offered congratulations in person, some with playful remarks, others with genuine admiration. "I don't know how you stayed so calm up there," one pilot said. "I would have panicked immediately." She smiled faintly. "Experience and focus," she replied. "And trust in the training and the team." It was true. The rescue had been a combination of personal skill, preparation, and the coordinated effort of her squadron. No single action alone had made the difference. During downtime, she spent hours reflecting on what she had learned. Emergencies often forced people to go beyond what they thought possible. Fear was natural, but it could be managed through focus, preparation, and decisive action. Courage was not an absence of fear, it was the ability to act despite it. And leadership was about trust, guidance, and clarity in critical moments. She knew that these lessons would guide her in future missions, shaping her as both a pilot and a person. She also considered how quickly ordinary life could shift into extraordinary circumstances. The routine patrol that morning had become a defining event. It reminded her that life was unpredictable, that responsibility could appear unexpectedly, and that true courage was demonstrated in action, not anticipation. She felt gratitude for her training, her squadron, and the skills she had developed over years of discipline. Those elements had converged at precisely the right moment to make a difference. The pilot she had rescued came to visit her later, accompanied by a few other colleagues. His face showed relief, gratitude, and a newfound respect. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. "I thought I was done for. You guided me when I couldn't even think straight," she responded modestly. "You did all the hard work. You stayed calm, trusted your training, and followed instructions. That's what made it possible. I just helped you see the path." Their conversation lingered in her mind. She realized that heroism often came quietly, without dramatic gestures or recognition. It was a combination of skill, courage, responsibility, and empathy. Saving a life was not about glory. It was about action, clarity, and dedication to duty. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had acted when it mattered most. As days turned into weeks, the incident became part of her story, part of her identity as a pilot. She returned to routine patrols, training exercises, and classroom briefings, but the experience had changed her perspective. She understood more deeply the weight of responsibility, the importance of preparation, and the value of calm decision-making. Every flight carried potential risk, and every moment could demand extraordinary action. She embraced that reality with quiet confidence. Her commanding officer called her into his office one morning, not for reprimand or instruction, but for acknowledgement. "You've set an example for everyone in this squadron," he said. "Not just for your skill, but for your courage, leadership, and composure under pressure. What you did was remarkable." She nodded, accepting the words with humility. Recognition was not her goal, but she understood its importance in inspiring others. Her actions could encourage young pilots to approach challenges with skill, responsibility, and courage. The incident also prompted discussions about training protocols and emergency procedures. Lessons learned from the rescue were analyzed, shared, and incorporated into future drills. Her experience became a case study, demonstrating how preparation, clear thinking, and decisive action could make a difference. She felt a sense of pride, not in personal recognition, but in knowing that her actions could improve the safety and effectiveness of her fellow pilots in future missions. Even outside the base, people began to take notice. She received letters and messages from aspiring pilots, expressing admiration and inspiration. Young men and women wrote about how her courage encouraged them to pursue their dreams despite fear or uncertainty. She responded when she could, offering words of advice, encouragement, and reflection. She understood that her experience could serve as a lesson, not just in skill, but in responsibility, calm, and courage. Despite all the attention, she remained focused on her duties. Flying was not about recognition, it was about responsibility. She continued her patrols, training exercises, and professional development with the same dedication as before. But the experience had left an indelible mark. She was more aware of the stakes, more attuned to her instincts, and more confident in her ability to handle crises. She also thought about the nature of bravery and leadership. It was not always dramatic or visible. Often, it involved quiet decisions, careful guidance, and support in critical moments. She had learned that courage was most meaningful when it was paired with responsibility, empathy, and skill. That lesson would guide her for the rest of her career, and perhaps her life. Months later, during a formal ceremony at the base, she received official recognition for her actions. The award acknowledged her skill, courage, and leadership in a life-saving rescue. She accepted it with humility, standing quietly as her colleagues applauded. She knew that the moment mattered not for personal glory, but for what it represented: a commitment to duty, preparation, and the ability to act decisively when it mattered most. After the ceremony, she reflected once more on the events of that day. She thought about the pilot she had saved, the decisions she had made, and the training that had prepared her for the unthinkable. She realized that her life as a fighter pilot was filled with responsibility, unpredictability, and challenges that demanded skill, courage, and clarity. And she felt ready more than ever to face whatever the sky might present. In quiet moments, she returned to the sky for routine flights, but each one carried a deeper awareness. The blue expanse above was still beautiful, still liberating, but it was also a place of responsibility, a place where preparation, focus, and courage were constantly tested. She embraced it fully, knowing that every flight could teach her something new, refine her skills, and test her resolve. And though she remained just another fighter pilot in the eyes of some, she knew the truth. She had faced the unthinkable, acted decisively, and saved a life. That day had defined her courage, skill, and sense of responsibility. It had transformed her understanding of what it meant to be a pilot, a leader, and a person entrusted with the lives of others. She had learned that ordinary days could become extraordinary in an instant, and that the measure of a pilot, or a person, was not in routine, but in how one acted when the unthinkable occurred. And for her, that lesson would remain, guiding every flight, every decision, and every moment of her life in the sky.